I wanted to apologize for looking like an Oompa Loompa. I just got back from Mexico. I am completely orange, and I don't know why. I think I got the wrong makeup shade from Sephora. Also, I'm contrasted to like the palest person on earth. So, hello everybody! Welcome back. We've enjoyed all the feedback that we've gotten so far. You guys have been amazing. Your comments have been awesome. So today's video is gonna be super spontaneous. This morning, I was reading a tweet and I thought it would be awesome to talk about. I'm going to basically play devil's advocate, and I'm going to just have opposing views to everything that's being said. In that way, we can incorporate everyone's views in our videos instead of just ours, and we want to kind of go through a list of like what we've heard people say against them, and then we can respond. When it comes to modesty, it's something that we grew up learning. Really struggled with. Yeah. The things that I can think of that people would say against this is, one, that men are naturally attracted to women's bodies. It's not their fault. Basically, it's instinctual. They are sort of all about sex, food, and... well, it's there for reproduction. Exactly. So they can't help it. They can't help their boners, and they can't help being attracted to women. It's natural. So my response to that would be, men are not apes. They are not wild animals that can't think for themselves. Men are intelligent, they're adults, and they can make those decisions on their own, and not toddlers who are unable to look away or unable to keep their opinions to themselves or keep their penis in their pants. Right. We have a choice and we have a thought process. We can actually analyze things and determine whether they're right or wrong. We have a moral responsibility. And also, my response would be that we are completely ignoring women in that equation. When we say that men are instinctually horny or sexually attracted to women, it's implying that like women don't have those feelings, when in reality we do, but we're able to control them. Society hasn't allowed us to express those because then we are a hoe. And I think it disregards how women are feeling in the whole situation. It's all about a man's response. It's not about how you're making a woman feel based on what she is or isn't wearing. Right. I've never told a man he should put his shirt on a hot day when he's on a summer run. I've never demanded modesty from a guy. Okay, so I understand a hot day, but what about on a colder day? If you see a woman wearing something that's more provocative, are you allowed to have an opinion on colder days? Does it completely depend on the weather? Because if it's hot, it's okay, and if it's not, then we all are allowed to judge her. So on a hot day, it's fine, but on a cold day, you should have some respect for yourself. Basically, you have no excuse to wear what you're wearing because it's cold, so put a shirt on. So my response to that would be that it's simply none of your business. It doesn't matter what the weather is, and it doesn't matter what anyone's wearing. And if you don't like it, you simply look away, you walk away. You have no right to tell someone else what to do, really. Yeah. The main premise of modesty culture is that women need to dress in a way that doesn't provoke sexual response in men. Right, okay, so my opposing view would be that women are special and sacred, and our bodies need to be covered because do you want a diamond that's been seen by everyone? It's rare. It's special. Like, I've had people talk about fruit with me where it's like, hey, oh, you have to peel it. A grapefruit or an orange, isn't it more appealing when it's covered because you know it's fresh? And like also covered, right? So it's like ripe inside. I mean, oranges, they're meant to be peeled, and that's when they're tasty. So if we do want to use that sort of diluted argument, the same with jewelry. Like, diamonds are meant to be worn, and they're meant to be shown off. Their value doesn't decrease based on how often they're worn. Women are compared to these types of metaphors all of the time. So what would you say in response to that? We're not fruit. Yeah, we're not jewelry. Human beings are very complex. You cannot compare us to an orange, you can't compare us to a diamond, you can't compare us to inanimate objects that just don't matter. So another opposing view would be that no man is going to want to marry you if you're dressed a certain way, or if you've had a certain amount of sexual partners. Basically, you're not going to find a husband if you dress that way because men want modest, respectful women. There are people who perpetuate that. We're going to talk about personal experience. That's something that I grew up with.
right? It wasn't just my parents, it was people like in my university. There was men everywhere basically saying, you're not like other women. Or I like you because you don't dress like that and you don't want that kind of attention.
Right.
And those types of things positively reinforced the fact that I not only slut-shame myself, I would slut-shame other people.
My response to that would be that there are 100% men that are like that and will marry you if you dress a certain way or you've had a certain amount of partners. Yeah. However, why would you want a life partner that thinks that little of you? Like, why would you want a life partner that is like that?
That's attaching your self-respect to your choice of attire, your choice of dress.
When I'm wearing a parka and when I'm wearing a bikini, I respect myself just as much. It's identical. It doesn't change at all. What I consider respect is the way I respect myself is I stand up for myself. I have boundaries. I pick healthy relationships. I work for healthy relationships. And that way I respect who I am. I don't let people treat me badly. I don't let people mistreat me. And so when you let someone walk on you, when you are a pushover or you are unable to create boundaries that are really necessary, in that way I can say, you know, you need to have more respect for yourself. But how we somehow attach clothing to self-respect is not something I understand or agree with. Men's bodies don't get policed like women's do.
A woman wearing something that could be considered provocative versus a man wearing something that could be considered provocative, but yet he's not judged for it.
Yeah.
So I grew up learning that it's the woman's responsibility to make sure a man doesn't look. Anytime I've been catcalled, I immediately look down at myself to see what I'm wearing, as if somehow I'm responsible for the way that a man reacts.
Yeah, if it was about what you wear, then we would, in countries where they enforce hijabs or burqas, where their body has to be completely covered, then there would be no catcalling, there would be no sexual assault, but there's a ton in those countries, so it has nothing to do with what a woman wears.
And I actually have experienced that. I've realized that I could be wearing a winter parka or I could be wearing a skirt and I'd still get catcalled. So we've deluded ourselves into thinking that our clothing is going to stop a man from being attracted to the female body.
Yeah.
And the length of your clothing is not going to stop women from being harassed. I want to make it clear. The fact that a man is attracted to a female's body is not wrong. Being attracted or having urges is not wrong. It's how you react to it. That's what you're responsible for. And it's offensive because we're basically saying that a man can't control his urges. It's offensive to women and men.
I mean, you should be offended when someone says that you can't help it because they're basically calling you a Neanderthal.
And also, it's so disrespectful because this is all a conversation in being heterosexual. Like, I go to a women's change room. There's females that are lesbian, bisexual, that are in a locker room. Like, why is it always about the man's gaze? And why is it always about, oh, a man can't react this way? Like, what about women? How come I can go into a locker room and I feel fine and safe, but I wouldn't be able to if it was the other way around?
It's just assumed that everyone is heterosexual, and it leaves so many people out. Growing up in a Muslim household, we grew up with a lot of shame regarding our body because of these sort of rules that were imposed. Even as a kid, if we were to have our pants come off or something, as a joke, it would always be like, oh, you're shamey, oh, you're naked. In their minds, to defend them, they had no idea how it was going to turn out. They thought they were teaching us respect. They thought they were teaching us modesty, and what actually happened is that for a very long time, we felt completely disconnected from our bodies, and it almost felt like our bodies weren't ours, and we always had to worry about what other people thought of our body versus what we thought of our body.
Our body was defined by how other people reacted to it.
Exactly. The phrase, don't you feel ashamed, would be said if we were in limited clothing, and so we started to equate love and respect for ourselves through clothing.
And there's a lot of guilt associated with it.
A lot of guilt, and you grow up with a really bad body image. You just have no
image issues.
I've had no self-confidence in the way I look, and I've always been very uncomfortable in certain types of clothing until recently.
When I was 12 or 13 is when I hit puberty, and I mean, I've always had a curvy body. And it was ogled at when I was 13. It was weird, and now it's glorified. But like, I haven't changed, and how I react or how I feel about my body, it has been in reaction to how other people react to it. So when I was at 13, I was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden curves are great. One memory that stands out to me is when I was working at a bank. My coworker and I had noticed that we were wearing the same pants, and I remember just being super excited that we had bought the same black pants. And I remember my branch manager calling me into the office, and she, a woman, said to me, you can't wear those pants to work. And I had mentioned, you know, well, so-and-so beside me is wearing the exact same ones. She specifically responded saying, yeah, but you can't because of your body type.
That's such a common story for so many women, especially black women, people who are just born with curves.
We have to constantly be apologetic for the way our body is.
Yeah.
It's always, oh, you're too sexual. We're constantly objectified for what we look like, It's like, oh, she's so flat, look at her, haha. And then it's like, when you have boobs, oh, cover them up, why are you showing them? We're constantly policed as to how we should be dressing.
Yep,
and what type of body we should have.
Should look exactly, yeah. That reminds me of when I was in junior high. This memory always sticks out to me. It might seem small, but it was traumatic in the moment. And I remember I was having a great time with my friend. I was one of the first kids that came into a classroom. I was wearing a tank top, and I had already, by the way, been hiding this from my family, what I was wearing, a tank top, because we weren't allowed to show our arms or shoulders. I already felt a bit of guilt wearing this, but then I walked into this room and I see my teacher and I'm like, hey, how are you? She looked at me and she was like, I need you to go to your locker right now and put on a sweater. Do you have a sweater? And all I could think of was like, I guess, yeah. And I was looking down at myself like, I am so confused at what I'm, wearing that's so inappropriate to her right now. I got to my locker and by this time the hallways were empty and I just broke down in tears because I just started thinking like, was my mom right the whole time? Am I like a whore because I'm wearing a tank top? Like, is this the worst thing possible? She was a woman too, and that's what made it even more hurtful.
Yeah, both of our stories I just realized had to do with women telling us that we can't do that.
Because they were told what to do, and they internalized that so much that they just thought it was normal and they were passing on that sort of respect. Another thing that's interesting is when you are so concerned and worried about what you are wearing, it's a way to keep women in the passenger seat, if that makes sense. If we are constantly worrying about what we look like, what we're saying, and we're always trying to please men, it's completely taking away from what we can offer society.
That's so true. I can speak to that. I mean, the amount of times I've had to take time and energy out of my day, of my morning, to say, okay, there's going to be 4 men in this meeting, so therefore I should be wearing a suit and not a dress, or I should be wearing my hair like this. Like, everything that I'm wearing takes, like, having to consider what I'm going to wear that day takes time and energy out of my day, whereas my male associate, he doesn't have to think about any of that. He's going to be wearing the same clothes regardless of who's in the meeting.
And focusing on the presentation or, the business venture.
And you wouldn't believe how important the morning of or the time before a meeting actually is when you're actually landing a large client proposal. You're trying to land a big deal.
Yeah.
Your mental energy and what you're focusing on is super important.
You also, like 99% of the time, harshly judge other women and what they wear.
Yeah.
So you think you're holier than thou when you're wearing these clothes. And if you aren't, that's great. And I'm super proud of you for, making it only about yourself. But a large part of the time, and including myself as a kid, when I was wearing what was dictated to wear, and I was covered, I constantly thought I was superior to other girls who were wearing short shorts and tube tops, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I would never wear that. I'm not like other girls. That's so slutty. And I thought I was better. Yeah. Even if I didn't voice it, I internally thought it.
If something happened to a woman where it was like a guy treated her a certain way, honestly, internally, I would be like, well, it's because you were wearing that, or maybe you shouldn't be acting like that. Maybe you shouldn't be. Yeah. I honestly thought like, oh, well, if she was wearing short shirts, of course, the guy's going to be talking about her like that. It was always positively reinforced that I didn't wear something. Like, oh, well, you're not wearing a short dress.
When we were kids, like, boys constantly told you're not like other girls and that's why I like you. And we fed off of that ego boost.
There's so much positive reinforcement, and then you end up doing it to other people. And the same things we're talking about, we were also guilty of. Yeah. We had to learn to get out of this. I still struggle with it to this day. I have to call out my own slut-shaming to myself, to my own body, and to other women. And, to not judge because a woman decides to wear something or not to wear something. We're not saying that you have to do one or the other, or that you shouldn't wear clothing and it doesn't matter. We're saying that you should have the choice to do so, and a male's response is irrelevant.
Exactly. Or just people's response in general is irrelevant. It's what you want to wear. And it's super common to have those thoughts, right? And to be like, oh my gosh, what is she wearing? Like, what a whatever insult. Yeah. But it's not your very first thought that matters. It's your second thought, in my opinion. Yeah. And it's how you react and what you do. So, like, I may have that thought because I was sort of brainwashed throughout my childhood to think this way. And so it's still there. And that's my first thought that I may think of someone. And then immediately I'm like, no, Umber, you're not this person. What are you even saying? Mm-hmm. She looks wonderful. And I move on. That's how I dictate what type of person I am, is by my second thought or my actions, and not my very first one.
Yeah. It's not about that initial feeling, it's about how you deal with those feelings. We are human at the end of the day. We're going to make mistakes. What you're responsible for is how you actually react to it.
It's just like having a temper and you want to punch someone in the face, but you don't. You don't react to exactly what you feel at that moment. Modesty levels change for each person, so it's entirely subjective on the person, and who gets to decide that?
Mm-hmm. Your level of extreme is completely different than someone else's level of extreme.
And everyone thinks that they're the moderate. Everyone thinks that they're not the extreme one.
And a lot of these rules were created by men for men. And they vary from place to place, culture to culture, man to man. Depending on what country you're in, what geographic location you live in, what's extreme and what's acceptable will be different. One thing that I want to reiterate is Josh Weed in his tweet saying, "I've never told a man he should put a shirt on just because a man's body is attractive to him. He's never demanded modesty from a guy." I really want people to think about the word modesty and how that can be problematic. It comes off as if it's a good thing, and I think it's something that everybody should question.
If you feel empowered by wearing modest clothing or covering clothing, that's awesome, and I'm very happy for you. But what I also want you to question is where that idea came from. Did that come entirely from you, or did that come from family members, from society, from your partner? Like, where is this coming from? Because 9 times out of 10, your brothers or male cousins or the men in your life weren't told the same thing as you. And if you're completely fine with that and you're comfortable with, you know, the dichotomy and that like blatant difference, then that's your choice, and I will always support your choice to wear what you want. But I guess who I am speaking for are the women who have it forced on them, like us, and all it really did was damage their self-esteem and their self-worth. One more point that I can come up with, like an opposing viewpoint, is what if women dress modestly in order to avoid attention? That's a very valid point. I dress certain ways when I am walking along a street, or if I know I'm going a certain way, I do dress in a more covering way because I do want to avoid that attention. But instead of, you know, congratulating me or thinking that's great, why don't we acknowledge how messed up it is that I have to do that in the first place?
And again, back to what we were saying, that what was modest to you in that situation would be completely inappropriate in another situation. It depends on your location and time and place. I think we should question the fact that based on where we are allowed to wear certain things.
So to wrap this up, at the end of the day, empowerment looks different to each person. But what's truly empowering is wearing what you want to.
Not what your family tells you to, what society tells you, not what your religion says or your partner tells you to.
Yeah. So that's our video! I hope the lighting was a little bit better. Because
I think we're getting better at
when we move, it's not super bright and flashy, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm actually this pale.
As always, leave a comment about what you want us to talk about.
And your thoughts on this video.
Your opinions,
And all the women and your experiences, this is like your chance to express yourselves. We're so open to hearing what you've been through.
The only thing I ask is that you please be respectful when you're speaking to others. No offensive comments.
If you do, we will delete them.
Yeah, we will block your ass. The only thing that we want is for people to have constructive conversations where we're trying to all understand each other. So please be nice.
If you like this video at all, like, comment,
subscribe, and follow us on Instagram too.
Share it with your friends.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Woo!
Bye!
You're done? Yeah.
We're done! We did the third video!
Subscribe!